Iltutmish would stabilize the new Delhi Sultanate. And Iltutmish had to serve, Iltutmish struck bronze coinage. These are known as jittals in Lahore and Delhi. And these included bilingual coins using Arabic and Nagari script with a horseman on the obverse and a bull on the reverse. The obverse of these coins has the following Nagari inscription, Shri Hamira, in the name of the Caliph. And the reverse has the following inscription, Shams al-Dunya wa al-Din Abu Muzaffar Iltutmish al-Sultan, which means son of the world and faith, servant of the victorious, Iltutmish the Sultan. And this is one of the bronze jittals of Iltutmish, struck between 1210 and 1235 AD in Lahore. And Iltutmish also struck silver and gold coinage to commemorate his conquest of Bengal. And these were known as tankas, which, for any of you who speak Bengali, you'll know that the word for coin in Bengali is taka. So the word taka in Bengali, which is still used today, it comes from the word tanka. And these coins had the inscription in Arabic on the reverse and a horseman on the obverse. And the Arabic inscription on the reverse has the following, Al-Sultan Al-Muazzam, Shams Ud-Dunya wa Al-Din Abul Muzaffar, Iltutmish Al-Qutbi, Nasir Amir Al-Muminin, which means the mighty Sultan, son of the world and faith, father of victory, Iltutmish Al-Qutbi, in the name of the Abbasid Caliph, Nasr, commander of the faithful. And this is a silver tanka of Iltutmish struck in Bengal between 1210 and 1223 AD with Arabic here on both sides and a horseman, very similar to Muiz al-Din Ghuri's coinage. It's holding a mace here. And then the reverse, again a horseman riding, and then Arabic inscription on both sides. This is a tanka. This is struck between 1217 and 1220 AD in Bengal. And Iltutmish also struck the first silver tankas with Arabic inscriptions on both the obverse and reverse. And these tankas were minted in Bengal as well. And this style of coin would be continued by subsequent sultans of Delhi, as well as the successor states. And Iltutmish's silver tankas have the following Arabic inscription on the obverse, Al-Sultan Al-Muazzam, Shams al-Dunya wa al-Din, Abu Muzaffar, Iltutmish al-Sultan, Yamin Khalifat, Allah Nasir Amir al-Muminin, which means the mighty Sultan, son of the world and faith, servant of the victorious Iltutmish, right hand of the Caliph al-Nasr, commander of the faithful. And the reverse has the following inscription in Arabic, Al-Nasir Lidin Allah, Amir al-Muminin, and then the Hijri date of 622. And this means Caliph al-Nasr of God's faith, commander of the faithful, 1224 AD, which is the equivalent of the Hijri date. And here is the bilingual tanka, which I described in detail, struck in 622 Hijri, which is 1224 AD in Bengal, with Arabic inscriptions on both sides. And now we're going to move on to Iltutmish's successor, Razia Sultan, who's very famous in India even today. She was the first Muslim ruler in Indian history who was Muslim. And she was an accomplished ruler, but faced a lot of rebellions and was overthrown by her nobles. And her billion jittals followed the same model as her father Iltutmish, with a horseman on the obverse and an Arabic inscription on the reverse. And the reverse reads in Arabic, Al-Sultan Al-Muazzam Rabiat Al-Din Bint Al-Sultan, which means the exalted Razia, the faith, daughter of the Sultan. And this is one of those coins. This is one of them as well. These are very scarce. So this is actually one of the coins of Razia Sultan. And just like that coin, these were struck in Delhi between 1236 and 1240 AD. And these don't really survive. So this is actually quite a scarce coin of Razia Sultan. And after Razia Sultan's rule, she was succeeded by ineffectual rulers until Ghiyas-ud-Din Balban came to power. And Balban was able to restore order to the Delhi Sultanate. And interestingly, his army was actually quite inclusive of all kind of castes within India, and his army reflected this as he recruited Indian soldiers from all different castes, which was a kind of very different to Hindu kings that come before him. And he also had Turkic cavalry as well fighting under him. And once again, there was rebellion in Bengal, but Balban was able to crush this after defeating the rebel leader Tugan Khan. And his main military success, though, during his reign was in repelling the Mongol invasion of India. And after a distinguished military career, he died in 1287 AD, and he's buried in Mehrauli in Delhi, and his tomb can still be seen today in Mehrauli. And he struck gold tankas in Delhi with Arabic on the reverse and obverse, and this style of gold coin would be struck for centuries after Balban's death. And the obverse has the following Arabic inscription: Al-Sultan, Al-Azam, Giyath, Al-Dunya, Wal-Din, Abul Muzaffar Balban Al-Sultan, which means the great Sultan, the one who asked for God's help from the world and faith, servant of the victorious, Balban the Sultan. The reverse has the following inscription in Arabic: Al-Imam, Al-Mustasim, Ame Al-Muminin, which means in the name of the Caliph, Imam al-Mustasim, commander of the faithful. And in the margins written in Arabic, Duriba Hadihi Sikka bi Hadrat Delhi Sana Khamsa wa Asab in wa Sitmi. And interesting couple of things here. So Sikka is still used today as a word for coin in Hindi and Urdu. So it's very interesting to see that word on a coin for the first time. And Hadrat Delhi also can be rendered as Hazrat Delhi, and this was used to describe Delhi at this time, as Delhi at this time was attracting a lot of kind of Sufi saints, so it was kind of viewed as kind of almost like a holy city at the time. And it's interesting that, and this particular coin was struck in 681 Hijri, between 1282 and 1283 AD. And this is one of the gold tankas struck in a high-grade gold in Delhi in between 1282 and 1283 AD. Now I'm going to look at the Khilji dynasty, and they came after the Mamluk dynasty, and their power extended from here, from Delhi all the way kind of northwest to Punjab, and down kind of deep into Maharashtra, and they had tributaries in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So a very broad range of territory. So now we're going to look at the rise of the Khilji dynasty. So after Balban's death, the Mamluk dynasty resumed its decline and came to an end when Muiz al-Din Kayqubad was killed. And in the political turmoil that followed, Jalaluddin Firuz Khilji took power and established the Khilji dynasty in 1290 AD. And Jalaluddin Khilji inherited a kind of smaller Delhi Sultanate initially, with territory reduced to Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, and Sindh. And he was unpopular with the nobility, but he was able to win over support from the common people. And the opposition from the nobles that he'd faced came to an head when he had to crush a rebellion in Awadh, led by his own nephew, Malik Chaju. And after defeating Malik Chaju's rebellion, Jalaluddin Khilji turned his focus to conquering territory in Haryana and Rajasthan. And he was successful in capturing Mandawa in Haryana and Jain in Rajasthan. But he was unsuccessful in capturing the famous fort at Ranthambore in Rajasthan. And despite his mostly successful military campaigns, there was renewed opposition from the nobility, and this continued. And this opposition from the nobility would cost Jalaluddin his life when he fell victim to a conspiracy hatched by his nephew, Alauddin Khilji, who had him assassinated in Karakmanikpur in Uttar Pradesh, which was the capital. At this time, Karakmanikpur was the capital of Awadh under the Khilji dynasty. And now we're going to look at Alauddin Khilji. So he's remembered, among other things, for building this water tank in Horsecast village in Delhi. Some of you who may have lived or worked or studied in Delhi would know this very well. Still a very popular spot for local people in Delhi. A lot of college students like to hang out there. So it's quite a nice little area, even today. So that's kind of his legacy that's given today. And let's go look at Alauddin Khalji's reign. So after assassinating his uncle Jalaluddin, he marched on Delhi from Karamanikpur, and he was proclaimed the Sultan of Delhi in 1296 AD. And he consolidated his support among the nobility and was in a strong position to resist kind of renewed Mongol invasion of India in 1297 AD. And the Mongols were halted in Punjab and Sindh, and this allowed him to turn his focus on invading Gujarat, where he pillaged the region. But unfortunately for him, with all the loot that he accumulated, this attracted the attention of the Mongols once again. And in 1299 AD, they invaded India and they were defeated near Delhi. And Alauddin Khilji renewed his campaigns of expansion by conquering Ranthambore Fort, Malwa and Mewa in Rajasthan, and Malwa in Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat by 1307 AD. And after defeating kind of further invasion by the Mongols, Alauddin Khilji invaded the Deccan region in the south of India, where he conquered territory in Maharashtra, and then marched south, where he reduced the Yadavas of Devagiri, the Kakatiyas, the Hoysalas, and made them vassals. And toward the end of his life, Alauddin Khilji fell ill, and he died in 1316 AD. And he was possibly, it's not known exactly, assassinated. And after his death, there was a brief political struggle. And after this struggle, Qutb-ud-Din Mubarak Shah came to power. But before looking at Qutb-ud-Din Mubarak, we're going to look at his Alauddin Khilji's coinage. And in addition to minting silver tankas like this, he also struck bilingual Ghanis with Arabic and Nagari scripts, again showing the kind of both kind of religions of the Hindus and Muslims kind of living together in his sultanate. And the obverse of his Ghanis is the following inscription in Arabic: Al-Sultan Al-Azam, Allah al-Dunya wa al-Din, which means the great Sultan, elevation of the world and faith. And this is actually one of the first times that, as Professor Pandey mentioned about the Persian script on coins. So for the first time, I believe this is actually one of the first times we see Persian on Islamic coins in India. So in addition to the Nagari script. And the Persian inscription states Shah Muhammad, which means King Muhammad. So in this case, he's actually stylizing himself as a Persian king. And he would have no doubt been very well acquainted with the works of Persian literature at the time. So perhaps he was trying to rule in the mold of a Persian king, as kind of described in the Shahnameh, which was produced under the Samanids and Ghaznavids. And the Nagari script describes him as Sri Sultan Alauddin, which means Lord Sultan Alauddin. So again, the use of Sri in this case kind of very much imitating previous Hindu rulers. So it kind of shows these both kind of models of kingship that were represented on these coins. And here is one of those coins. This is a Bilin Ghani, struck by Alauddin Khilji in 1296 to 1316 AD, kind of bilingual here. You can see the Nagari script here, and then Shah Muhammad here, which is Persian, and then Arabic. And now we're going to look at Qutb-ud-Din Mubarak Shah, who came to power in 1316. And he initially retained the nobility from Alauddin Khilji's government, which helped to stabilize his rule. And for a time, and he had to deal with rebellions in Gujarat, as well as retake Devagiri in Maharashtra. And he also besieged Warangal in Telangana, capital of the Kakatiya kingdom, and renewed their status as vassals after their defeat. But despite these successes, he faced opposition from the nobility, despite initially kind of placating them early on in his reign. And he would be killed in a palace coup by Nasir ad-Din Khusro, his Barodu soldiers, in 1320 AD. And Qutb-ud-Din Mubarak struck gold tankas, and just in addition to the billion Ghanis. And these gold coins had Arabic inscriptions on the obverse and reverse. On the obverse, it states, Al-Imam Al-Azam, Khalifa Rab Al-Amin, Qutub al-Dunya wa al-Din. Abu Muzaffar, which means the great Imam Caliph, Lord of the two worlds, axis of the world and faith, father of the victorious. And on the reverse, it states, Al-Sultan ibn Al-Sultan al-Wathiq, Billah Amir al-Mu'mineen, which means the Sultan, son of the strong Sultan, in the name of the commander of the faithful, meaning the Abbasid Caliph. And this is one of the square gold tankas struck in 718 Hijri, which is 1318 to 1319 AD, struck in Delhi by Qutbuddin Mubarak. And now we're going to look at the last king of the Khilji dynasty, Nasir ad-Din Khusro. And his position was precarious after seizing power in 1320 in a palace coup. And his reign would be short-lived, lasting less than 2 months. And he attempted to consolidate his position, but this was kind of futile, as the governor of Dipapur in Punjab, Ghiyath-ud-Din Tughlaq, refused to acknowledge him as Sultan. And Ghiyath-ud-Din Tughlaq led a rebellion and deposed Khusro, thus ending the Khilji dynasty. And his dynasty would be known as the Tughlaq dynasty, which would rule India under the Delhi Sultanate. And with that, I come to the end of my lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have given a very interesting lecture. We have the history of India from the perspective of the coins which were minted at different points of time. A very innocent question I would like to ask.
Yes.
Before the audience invited to ask questions, where these coins are at present kept? Are these coins available? Where they are kept?
A lot of them are kept in museums, and also we have a lot of coin collectors in India as well. I actually know, like there are a lot of coin collectors in India as well who collect these coins as well, and a lot of the time, so they're kind of kept in museums and in private collections.
Okay. Yes. So in Varanasi, in our university, there is a museum called Bharat Kala Bhavan. So there are some coins of different periods. But the way plethora of coins are there, yes, they are as private property with different people. I was once talking to someone who was a seller of gold coins, and then he was telling me that he had some coins or muhar of Akbar's time. And then he was saying that it is very, very costly. If a 10 gram gold is cost or having cost 50,000 rupees 10 grams, then if a 50 gram muhar or gold coin of that time, it would have immense value because of the antiquity, I think. So I invite the honorable audience to come up with the questions or queries or observations about the Indian coins and whatever Dr. Ali presented. So I invite the students and the teachers who are here to come up with their queries and presentations.
Actually, but before we start, actually, I want to also just elaborate on your question about Persian as well, because you'd asked.
At the very beginning, yes, I presented the question about Arabic and Persian. Yes.
Yeah. I feel I should also answer that as well. As I mentioned, we start seeing Persian on Alauddin Khilji's coins, because Alauddin Khilji was very much a man very much engrossed in Persian culture. I mean, other Delhi sultans were also very much engrossed in Persian culture, and even going back to Muhammad Bin Qasim, but Alauddin Khilji particularly, he wanted to stylize himself as a Persian king. So that's why he called himself a Shah rather than a Sultan. to show the kind of Persian influence that he was kind of very much under the influence of, and he would have read and spoke Persian at court.
Yes, so because of the title of Shah, it may be said that it had the Iranian influence.
Yes.
Okay. So it was really a very good lecture, and as you had given lecture on the classical period coins, and then you came up with the description about the coins which were minted under the influence of Islamic arrivals. So if you have to compare the coins of classical period and the later classical periods and the Hindu period and the coins which came into existence after the arrival of the Islamic rulers here in India, how can you compare? Can you have some comparative description of about the coins? Can the coins also reflect about it may appear very hypothetical, but I am just asking, do the coins speak about the might of the kingdoms or the kings or the emperors? Can the coins reflect the might or the power and influence or of course, the power of the emperors or the kings who came to rule over? Can the coins also say about that? Yes, I'm just asking you.
Yes, very much so. As with the pre-Islamic kind of obviously Hindu coinage that I described, particularly in the Gupta era, they very much cited the name of the gods of the Hindu pantheon, of the Vedic religion, and such as Lakshmi and Lord Shiva and the different, and Goddess Durga as well. And at the same time also, because they wanted the blessings of the gods when they were ruling. And this kind of showed their power, that their power came from the gods. The gods would give them, wealth, obviously, because Goddess Lakshmi would have obviously linked with wealth even today. And obviously Lord Shiva very much linked with power and renewal, according to the Hindu religion. And then when you compare it to Islam, well, the one thing that every kind of local king in India wanted, or I should say the sultans wanted, was recognition from the opposite, the caliph in distant Baghdad. Because the caliph was kind of a temporal ruler who kind of basically, the caliph basically means deputy, because he was the deputy of God on earth. So if the sultan in Delhi could gain in recognition, then that would be like a big symbol of kind of like respect, and show that he was basically God-given authority to rule in Delhi and in North India. So in that sense, like they both kind of sought recognition of God, or God, of God or the Hindu gods, to show that they were the legitimate powers in the region. So there is that kind of comparison that can be made for sure.
Yes. We find that all the coins, they reflect one thing in common. The ancient and the medieval coins, they reflect one thing common, that those who were the creators of the coins, those on the orders of the kings, the coins came into existence, they all reflected or showed their respect to the Almighty. This is something very common to all the coins. So, as a student of the coins, I'm asking, when do you think some of the coins came into existence having some secular appearance, not any divine or any god things were there? Do you think there were some secular type of coins also existing? Yes.
No, not at this time, actually. It was much later. Under the Mughals, you start seeing more secular, in a sense. I mean, because obviously Akbar's kind of experimented with kind of his own religion and own different things. And, he's kind of the first kind of secular ruler in India, in a sense. And he's considered that by some historians, particularly in Aligarh. But before that, the Sultan of Delhi, almost all of them wanted to style out themselves as Muslim rulers. So there was very much that, while also recognizing that they ruled over a lot of non-Muslims, Hindus. So very much actually, but at the same time, the existence of kind of two languages kind of coexisting could imply or have an implicit secular relationship, perhaps. Having two languages trying to represent both religions and using Sanskrit and Arabic together on a coin could imply that, but one cannot be so sure, because they always wanted to because obviously that kind of, first and foremost, was always that the fact that they were Muslim rulers, but that kind of use of Sanskrit in Nagari script kind of implied that maybe, that maybe that secular aspect, it could be applied, possibly. It's hard to say.
Yeah, actually, I was just saying that in the modern period, when we see the currency notes, in the currency notes, we just find something like a sort of a bearer check. They say that I promise to pay the bearer something like that. In Indian currency, or even in the British period, the currency which came into existence, they reflected the images of the royal rulers, and of course, then there were certain writings which were up to the effect that they were just promising that they would be giving, like the bearer would be given 1,000 rupees or something like that, or 500 rupees. So this sort of, actually, because of the metal involved in the medieval and ancient coins, their value was very much explicit there, in the sense that the metallic value of the coins, that was the exact value or exchange value of the coins. But with the coming of the paper currency, we find that the paper currency is something more in a sense of commerce, that they are like promissory notes. They promise that they would be giving something like that. And then those promissory notes are, of course, equivalent to some gold coins or gold weight, like dollar, or all the currencies before 1948 or something like that. All the currencies were defined in terms of gold, or some currencies were defined in terms of silver, like in India, Indian rupee was very much defined in terms of silver during British period. And even prior to that, Sher Shah Suri, he just promulgated or initiated or introduced the rupee as such. So in that very context, I was saying, and I also found that the female images on the coins, they appear sometimes, I should say, in the classical age of Indian coins, and later on, only we find the mentioning of the imageless God, which is Allah, in the Islamic coins. The imageless God. Sometimes it is said that about a ruler, it is mentioned there in the coins of medieval India, but it is said that he is something like manifestation of the Almighty. Yes. So, how something which is not to be imagined as such or described or imaged, that is mentioned there, and at the same time the ruler is also mentioned. So these coins, they convey something like a very humble way of paying respect to the Almighty. So all the coins of ancient and medieval India, they show their veneration for something which is supernatural or superpower or transcendental, if I may be allowed to say. So,
yeah, that temporal power, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the way. That's how they would view themselves.
They have the commercial value and the mundane value, but the emphasis was on the transcendental. So now I invite the students. I think they don't have, they have questions, but they are not coming up with their questions, and they would be thinking about the presentation which you gave and the PPT, and the things are there. They would be, and that would be on YouTube also. They would be seeing it again and again, and they may come up with their questions. So with these words, I'm very much pleased and very much, I should say, thankful to you. And now I invite Alok to propose vote of thanks. आप vote of thanks जो है दीजिए. ये अपनी मैडम अनुराधा जी चली गई हैं कि हैं?
जी वो अभी चली गई सर.
अच्छा ठीक. तो आप you propose vote of thanks.
जी. Thanks to everyone for participating in the lecture and making it meaningful. And I thank the speaker, Honorable Azeem Ali sir, for giving his valuable time and speaking very meaningful for understanding the great heritage of India. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes, and we take this opportunity to thank all the participants who just took part in the lecture, and really,
yes,
that also something which encourages us to organize such lectures. So thank you, Dr. Azeem Ali, and we hope we would be listening you more and more, and the moment you prepare your paper or your presentation on further coins, if you have time and if you can spare that, then we would be immensely grateful to you. And I thank you very much, and I thank all the audience, honorable audience. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir.
सभी लोगों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जो लोग आज लेक्चर ज्वाइन किए. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. थैंक्स. Today is a very auspicious day, Azeem Ali, in India. That is auspicious in the sense that it is called a day for the veneration of the teachers.
Oh, okay, yes.
It is a full moon day when moon is full. So, and particularly this month is called Ashad as per tradition. Ashad and the full moon. So it is devoted to the veneration of Guru, you call Guru or teacher or
Guru Purnima.
And through him the God, the Almighty. So on this very auspicious occasion we met, and thank you very much for giving this lecture on this very auspicious day, devoted to knowledge and a discovery for the truth. This day is something like devoted for the discovery of the ultimate truth. So thank you very much.
And this week was also the Eid for Muslims as well, so kind of that combination. Yes. So yeah, so we both had this nice kind of combination there. So
yes, of course.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Right. I'll end the call then. Thanks. Right.
Thank you, sir.